Okay. Sounds good. So I'm going to get started. My name is Chris Blizzard. I'm also from Mozilla. The ironic thing is that I didn't even know Asa was talking until I looked at the schedule yesterday, and I was worried we were going to end up talking about the same things, but trust me, they're going to be very different. I wanted to cover just a few things real quick. I want to talk a little bit about Mozilla first. A lot of people don't understand the structure that we have. It's sort of different than a lot of organizations and a lot of open source projects. And I'm going to spend some time talking about mobile because there's a lot going on in that area as well. So let's cover these large two things. So Mozilla, as an organization, has been around for 10 years, just over 10 years now. During that time, we've changed from sort of the spawn of Netscape into our own project, and also have grown into an organization that doesn't just act as a community center for open source, a particular open source project, but also we started, we've incorporated as a nonprofit. We've engaged with businesses to help fund the operations. And really, we've turned ourselves into this hybrid organization that has nonprofit goals, is mission-oriented, also produces software, and also works with a community process and transparency. So we're very different than most. And we have this core mission. Mozilla's mission is really to protect the web and protect the internet as a whole and make sure that sort of the explosion of creativity and the explosion of change that we've seen as a result of the internet continues on. And we consider that to be part of our core mission. It's why we do the things we do, and it really motivates us. So one of the most important things we do is we release products, right? Most projects, they release libraries, they produce something that other people consume, but we really know that in order to create change in the marketplace and create change on the internet, that what we have to do is create something that normal people can consume. So we target human beings. We don't target developers. We don't target anything. We want people to be able to use this in their house, and that's a really important thing. So the other thing we do, just as a bullet point, is we do have a lot of revenue that comes in as a result of our operations, but we reinvest most of that both in other open source projects, but also in our own development. So we're not profit motivated in that sense. So I want to talk about this as a concept. This is one of the ways that we approach problems inside of Mozilla, and it's something that's really useful to think about for other open source projects. Right? What are the things that you can do to create the most change for other people? That's the concept of leverage. It's a very simple idea. So when we talk about what we're building, we say, how can we create the most leverage for the web as a platform? What do we need to add to Mozilla to make the web competitive versus proprietary products? That's a very important thing, and that's how we protect open standards. How do we make things easier for people who want to develop against the web? How do we make things that will enable new applications and new uses for Mozilla? That's really important for us and for our users. That's very important. So when they use the web, when they have to experience the web, when there are real problems on the web, Firefox started as the browser with pop-up blocking. We tried to solve a real problem that was available, or a real problem that was on the web, and we created leverage for them. So one of the other interesting things is we're aware that we're in a pretty active marketplace. Microsoft Internet Explorer still has most market share. We're second, and there are other ones too. But by creating these products, we know that even though they aren't our users, we're forcing other people to change. We're forcing other people to release products. And that means that even for users on those products, we're able to keep the web moving forward and keep those products up to date. That's a really important concept for us, and that's something that's really important. So even though they're not using our products directly, we're able to influence their experience by dragging things forward. So Asa just talked about this. So I love this phrase. I don't know about you, but creating joy for users when they touch your product, when they have an experience with your product, when they run into something, there's this element of surprise and this element of joy that maybe they didn't have before. And we always need to be on the cusp edge. We need to figure out how we can keep doing that over and over again. So we went from Firefox 2, which was pretty good. It was a very good browser compared to what the market was 2.5 years ago. I don't remember when we did our release. It's quite a while, actually. But Firefox 3, I think when people get their first experience with it, are going to be a little bit surprised. It looks different. It feels a little bit different. It's going to feel like it's part of the platform. It's got a lot of things that they're going to continue. The Awesome Bar, I think, is going to be great because it's going to create that element of surprise. Like, oh, it remembers everything that I was doing before. And I think that's a really important thing. So that's something we're always trying to do, and that's one of those sort of fundamental elements of design that we take care of. Fixing real problems on the web, pop-up blocking, malware, these are the kinds of things that are going to show up. We consider that to be very important. And I'll talk a little bit about this one. Feature creep is something that has destroyed a lot of projects, or a lot of products and a lot of experiences. You talked about the Microsoft Office example, right? 90% already exist in the product. The add-on system and the extension system was actually originally created to give us in the project the ability to say no to features, which is basically one of the hardest things you can ever do in a product. We were able to say, you know, we're not going to put that in the core product because we think it's too intrusive to the experience. It makes things too hard to find. Why don't you make an extension? And the result of that was this creative explosion that happened for people to be able to customize their experience and create the things that they needed and to be able to share it with other users, and that's another fundamental aspect of it. But we've been able to avoid feature creep for the most part because we have this extension system. Imagine a Firefox, there are about 2,000 add-ons that you can get for Firefox now, which is a huge number. Imagine all those crammed into the product. It's insane, right? It'd be completely useless. You wouldn't be able to find anything. That's sort of the secret of add-ons, is it isn't just about customizing your experience. It's also about keeping the core experience extremely pure and extremely easy to use, so that out-of-the-box experience that you get is a really great one. So that's a really important thing that we do. So I talked a little bit about leverage before. You have to realize that at the core of Mozilla, we're about 150 to 160 employees, right? We have a larger community of contributions. We had about 500 contributions, or 500 individuals involved in contributions for Firefox 3. There's about 75 localization teams for languages all over the world, 200 people. They, in turn, those developers generated about 11,000 patches, and that scales up to about 165 million people. So this very small core set of people, about 500 people, is responsible for the experience of 165 million people. That's a really important thing. We don't need a company of 40,000 people to be able to do that. And we do that by being open source. We do that by being transparent. We allow anybody to participate. We allow anybody to contribute ideas. We allow them to contribute directly to the project through extensions. All of these things are really important for taking a very small amount of effort, not a very small amount of effort, but a relatively small team, and be able to create something that affects so many people. So we have added about 45 million users in the last 6 months, and our user base has doubled in the last year, so we're seeing this really nice acceleration curve too. I just thought I'd talk about this. This is completely unreadable, isn't it? Yeah, I'm sorry. It's more yellow, I guess. This was just at the end of 2007, giving you some market data in Europe in particular, which seems to really like our products. I'll give you an example. Slovenia we apparently have 44% market share. So, for an open source project to be almost to the cusp of being a majority browser, it's an interesting thing. So, I've got 2 slides coming up, which may or may not be readable on this display, it turns out, now that I think about it. And I want to talk just about 2 specific experiences that I've seen recently and noted on the web about the kind of people that Firefox is actually reaching. Can you guys read that at all? In a little bit? I'll read it. So this is from Seth Godin's blog. Did you read this by any chance? So he basically had this title article. I'll read it to you guys because you can't read it. It says, the title was, Why Downloading Firefox is Like Getting into College, which was sort of interesting. So it says, his example, 25% of the visitors we track at Squidoo use Firefox, which is not surprising, but 50% of the people who actually build pages on the site are Firefox users, twice as many. This is something true of bloggers, Twitter users, Flickr users, everywhere you look. If someone uses Firefox, they're way more likely to be using other power tools online. The reasoning, in order to use Firefox, you need to be confident enough to download and use a browser that wasn't the default when you first turned on your computer. So this is interesting. What this says about people who use Firefox and the people that we're reaching are the users who actually make a choice. They have to go find something. They have to be curious enough to go out and do it. And the result of this is that Firefox tends to capture the kind of user base that's very creative, very interested in exploring their world, not a passive role player, and they become part of that conversation that is the internet, right? So that gives us once again, a lot of leverage and able to affect it gives us a lot of leverage to be able to affect what web authors do. If somebody's creating a really popular site, they tend to build it in Firefox first, and then make it work in other browsers. That's a really important thing for us, which means it improves our web compatibility story and makes it available to anybody who wants to try it. So we've got this really great circle. So I'll give you another example. This one's going to be hard. Wait, do you want to play the part of the other guy? This is an exchange. Yeah, you're going to come up here. Which guy do you want to be? You want to be Cletus or Earl? Earl. You're Earl? All right, I'll be Cletus then. Dude, you got to check out this new internet thing out.
What is it?
Fox something, and it's awesome.
Better than what I got?
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah. Let me show you.
How's that?
Well, it's like a zillion times faster for one, but then it's also got these things.
Wait, what did you just do?
It's like another internet thing within the original internet thing.
Wow.
Yeah, all on one page, see?
Yeah.
And it's a zillion times faster, and it's free.
You're shitting me.
Nope. Click the little house button, and you can get there.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yes, thank you. One of my fellow Mozillians. So this is from Stephen O'Grady's blog. Stephen Grady's sort of known in the open source community. He's a really good guy. He might actually be here. I ran into him in Austin a couple days ago, but he said this actually happened in an airport. He just overheard this conversation between two guys, and he swears it's true. So we're absolutely hitting different parts of the market that I don't think open source ever touches. These guys have no idea it's open source. They just know it's free of cost. They can download it, but it definitely improves their experience, right? That's really important. So I just want to sort of give you an overview of Mozilla, and this is the sort of second part of my talk. I want to talk about mobile. This is going to feel a little different. I want to talk about this as a new idea, a new concept within Mozilla, something we're pretty committed to, something we've been working on for a little bit of time, mostly on top of the Firefox 3 work, because we think it's really important for us to sort of bring the web, the open web, to phones and to mobile, and sort of give everybody the opportunity to participate. There's two modes of thought. First of all, the web is going mobile in the developed world. There's a lot of thought that this might be a good way for the web and the internet and all the information that's available and the ability to participate and get access to information available to a huge part of the world that hasn't had access to it before. So this is really important. We do have a really full organizational commitment. We have a full-time team on it now. We're starting to develop, and we have a really good base to start on. It turns out that Firefox 3, a huge amount of the work that we did in performance and in footprint and startup time and all of these little things have made a huge difference from the desktop standpoint, but they've also allowed us to sort of look at mobile as a possibility. I will also say that there's a sort of market-changing event with the iPhone. You have to give Apple credit because they reset expectations about the web and what the web experience on a phone should be or on a mobile device should be. In the past, there was always this effort to create and change the internet. You almost had to create a second web to be able to run on the phone with all these strange standards, and everybody had to create 2 copies of their site and expose that information through these really small screens, and Apple did a great job of figuring out how to do that. So they have sort of opened up the market for people like us, for anybody else who wants to create a great web browser, and hopefully bring the web to the mobile ecosystem. So I will say this too. We have the advantage. The Firefox isn't just great technology. It's not just a browser, but it's a really great brand. Mitchell Baker, who runs the organization, she often goes and talks at a lot of really interesting places. And the really interesting thing is most of them have no idea who Mozilla is. Like if you say Mozilla to them, they sort of scratch their heads and go, okay. But if you say Firefox to them, almost everybody knows who it is, right? It's an absolutely wonderful brand. It's known throughout the world. And that gives us a huge amount of leverage to look at the mobile market. This is sort of an amusing anecdote. The title of the article is Opera Mini Challenges Mozilla Fennec in Booming Mobile Market. The reason why we find it so amusing is because Opera has to compete with us, and we've never shipped anything. That's really sort of what the brand means. What's that? Author Desire Atho. You can search for it. I don't remember where it came from. But it was sort of amusing, right? The idea is, oh my God, Mozilla's entered the market and they've already won, but Opera's been doing mobile for as long as we've been around, I think. It's pretty amusing. So that's the sort of leverage that brand gives us, and why we think it's really reasonable for us to even think about it. So we got some existing mobile browsers. We got Opera. Opera has a desktop product. They have a couple different versions you can get on mobile. Everything from sort of a Java rendering engine where all the rendering's done in the back end to something that actually downloads some parsed content to a full browser on the phone. Safari exists, and it's just going to be available on Apple's phones. It would actually be really interesting if Apple decided to put Safari on other phones. It would be an interesting move for them. We have WebKit, which is the underlying technology. I call that Brand X, right? Because WebKit has absolutely no consumer brand whatsoever, not recognizable. Why would people choose it? And IE, which actually does exist on mobile, but it's not. People don't go looking for it; they just sort of get stuck with it. Mobile performance. It was performance in general really was one of the main focuses of Firefox 3. We made a huge amount of progress. Ryan here knows, for example, he's been tracking it pretty closely. Mostly in JavaScript performance, but we also know, for example, that we're 3 or 4 times faster in our DOM performance. There's a lot of things going on. We mostly did it for desktop users because desktop users complained, right? They're like, it's too big, it uses a lot of memory, it's too slow, you guys need to fix it. So we just took a couple months, more than a couple months, like 6 months, and went and just made it happen. And we have seen major improvements, even in the beta cycle, which has only been a few months long. So this is a slide that we like very much, because we got Firefox 3 Beta 5 over here. It's not very big, and Safari 3.1, which is actually a pretty good product, Opera, and then got like IE7, which is a space elevator. It's over on their side. So we do pretty well on JavaScript performance. That's pretty important. But I'll talk a little bit about mobile performance. This is a graph. It basically shows. There's 2 tests here. This is SunSpider, which is Apple's test. This is Dromeo, which is a new test that we just released in the last few days, which is pretty similar to the SunSpider test, but it has a couple of small advantages. It's just the difference that's really obvious. So the red is basically us running on the Nokia N810, which is an ARM-based machine, which a huge number of mobile devices are run on, and running on SunSpider as well. So we do much better than Micro B, for example, which is I should have explained what the 2 are. The red one is basically what we call the Fennec browser, which is based on Firefox 3 Beta 5 or a little bit later. The blue is something called Micro B. Micro B is a browser that Nokia included with their OS 2008 interface on the Nokia N810. Who here has an N810? I'm kind of curious. So quite a few. You guys have seen the Micro B browser. It's actually based on something like Firefox 3 Alpha 1. Sometime in that time frame, they modified it. They shipped it. It wasn't bad. It was pretty good, but we've made a huge improvement here. So this is actually a graph that I don't think anybody here has seen before. This is also on the N810, and what I did was I took a version of the Mozilla browser, the same thing that you saw on the previous one, and I compared it against a WebKit build on that same hardware using pretty good compile options, -02. And it turns out that one of the results of the performance work that we did was we're about 1.6 to 2 times faster running on ARM than WebKit is. The interesting thing about that is that gap doesn't exist on Intel hardware, right? WebKit is just a little bit slower or just a little bit faster, depending on the operating system on x86, but the gap widens considerably on ARM. So we sort of moved the goalpost on quite a bit on mobile browsers. So this is really interesting. This is where we're starting from. I will point out we haven't actually done a huge amount of optimization for ARM yet. We don't have atomic operations for locking. We don't have all this stuff, but we've already got a good start. So let's talk about Fennec. Fennec is the code name that we're using for mobile browser experience. Our goal is really to create the full Firefox experience or translate it into mobile, whatever that may look like. That's really important for us. We don't think there should be any compromises on your browsing experience. Now, obviously, it's mobile. You probably won't have all the menus. You probably won't have all that. But one of the things we want to do is make sure that add-ons are available in the same way that they're available for Firefox. It's extremely important for us because we know about the creative explosion that has happened with add-ons and the kinds of things that get done and sometimes pulled into the core, things we hadn't thought of. We're not going to be able to design everything that's perfect. We need a lot of ideas, yeah. The question was, does that mean it's a Zool app? Yes. is absolutely a Zool app. We're working on both touch and keypad versions. I think keypad version is going to come first. The touch version is going to come first. Really, we're just getting started. We've only started putting together things in a few weeks. But we're able to leverage a huge amount of Firefox, so that helps a lot. Yeah. So the question is there a target date for release of 1.0? We've been saying the end of 2008. We hope to have something that works on mobile. So I will point out that it depends on platforms too, right? You never know who's going to want to ship it. You never know who you're going to be able to work with. You never know what you're going to target, what's available. A lot of stuff is going to change in 2008, right? You've got, I'll talk about the market a little bit, right? We have the iPhone, which is heavy. It's actually a small number of units if you compare it to the worldwide market. You have Nokia, who's some huge percentage of the market, like 40% or something worldwide. I mean, it might actually be higher. I can't remember. But mostly they're shipping on the S60 operating system. We haven't decided if we want to target that yet or not. It's a huge change for us. We run really well on Linux, we run really well on Windows, but S60 is a very strange operating system. It does have a lot of apps available for it, but once again, we've got to figure out what we want to do. Windows Mobile actually will still sell, and I can't remember what the exact number is, like 10 or 20 million units even in the West. Do we want to target that? We actually do run on Windows Mobile. Do we want to try and release a browser for it? It's like, we'll see. Right. The public builds for Windows Mobile. Support has been very slowly checking into the tree. They have JavaScript problems, so there haven't been any builds. So they're still trying to work on it. We're trying to bring more people on to actually fix it. Yeah, Brad and Doug Turner actually is. Doug Turner is the original guy who did Minimo originally, which was based on Firefox 1.5. He has been doing a lot of that work along with Brad. They aren't generating builds because they probably don't work well enough yet, I would imagine. So, yeah. I don't know about Android. We're still talking about it. So the big problem with Android is that what Google has said publicly is that you can only develop in Java, and there's no reason for us to do so. If they allow native apps, so it's actually interesting. There is a strategic reason why it might be good to do something on Android. So Android includes WebKit as part of its base platform. And as part of that base platform, it will be shipped on handsets. They're not making any guarantees at all across different phones, whether or not what versions will be on it, or any restrictions on whether or not they have to include a certain version, or whether or not they deliver updates, right? So you might get these entire variety of phones all based on Android with entirely different behaviors, entirely different security vulnerabilities, et cetera, as they browse the web. Just like us, and I'm not picking on them, just like us, they have had their share of problems. Remember that the jailbreak on the iPhone came through the browser, right? All sorts of problems. So the opportunity there is that we're able to move faster, and we're able to move cross-platform. So we're able to provide all users across platforms a consistent experience, a secure experience. So they're the same kind of thing that we have on desktops. If it's part of the core platform and they don't make any guarantees about updating, it can be up to us to do so. So there might actually be a reason to be on Android. It's hard to tell. It really depends on, is the technology there? Are they going to allow people to develop? Are they going to allow users to choose? And what is the actual footprint, the market footprint, going to be? It's hard to tell. I mean, it's Linux-based. It's got a very different windowing system. And we're actually become more portable with Firefox 3. So it's a big question, but we're looking pretty much at everything. We got to pick a few to hit first, I think, and could be successful. So really, we are just getting started at this. This is an example of what Fennec looks like on the Nokia N810. I stole this from Flickr, from Mark Finkel's account. It's pretty simple, right? It's URL bar. He was showing off basically that right-click works. You create tabs and switch tabs and basically get access to add-ons. What he has said is that he has tested some extensions and they already work because we're using all the same infrastructure as we are on Firefox. And it works reasonably well. We've got a lot of work to do on touch, so if you're trying it out, you have to have a sort of set of expectations. It's a pre-alpha product at this point. So I'm closing. I have no idea how much time I took. I've never done this presentation before. It's pretty quick, I think. We really do want to create the same joy in mobile. I don't think that we want to create a half-baked product. I think that people have a really high expectation for Firefox now. Now, we're a transparent organization, so we have to do that development in front, so everybody's going to get to see the problems that we create and the problems we have. But I think we're going to do pretty well. We really want to make sure that we're creating motion on the web. I think this is a really important thing. We're seeing really attacks on the web from proprietary platforms like Silverlight, proprietary platforms like Adobe Air, where that sort of creativity and that sort of innovation that's been happening in the web browser space could be closed into a single company or a couple of companies, and we think that's a real shame. I think one of the things you have to realize is we're a part of this, is that we're starting to see innovation from multiple people at the same time, multiple companies at the same time. No one person leads the web anymore, right? Microsoft's trying new things. Opera tries new things. Apple just stuck video into their build, so there's native video support. We're doing all these things with user interface that we're trying to create a great experience for users and developer tools all at the same time. So when multiple companies are creating interoperable systems that are also innovative at the same time, and they're all creating equally, it's an extremely vibrant and extremely interesting thing, and we need to make sure that that keeps happening. That's part of our mission. So, creating motion on the web and keeping everybody leading, right? We're all leaders in this space, and just keeping the web open and vibrant. So that's basically it. Any other questions? Yes. Oh, Palm OS. I don't know. I don't think we've really considered it. If Palm wanted to come. So I'm not actually that familiar with Palm. I know that there's sort of Palm OS, and I know there's Access Linux as well, which is a fork of the software, and they're in their own ISV space, and they have a browser of their own that's NetFront. So we'll see how that goes, but yeah. Yes. The open codec issue. Oh, Christian's looking at me here. Christian works on codecs all the time, and Wim's in the back too somewhere. The open codec issue. So we hope that we're going to be able to add video and audio to the next version of the browser. I'm not making that commitment now because it ships when it ships and it's ready, but we would love to have it. We have not decided that we want to ship OGG support, but I think there are a lot of people inside of Mozilla that would absolutely love to have it available on every single platform and try and create a standard out of it, de facto standard. Those are dangerous words, of course, and it gets people riled up, especially when you're talking about 20%, 30% of the web, depending on the country you're talking about. So we haven't decided yet. We're still figuring out risk, but there are a lot of people who want to do it. What's that? So Safari does support the video tag. I'm not personally aware of which codecs they support, which are entirely different. Like it's probably. Do they advertise that you can use any formats available on the machine itself? It pumps in the QuickTime. So if you install a QuickTime codec, then you can use it from Safari as well. Yeah. So we may end up in the same situation depending on how we decide. We'll see how it goes. Monetizing plugin development? I think the answer is yes. I think there are people who are doing that. There are a lot of add-ons that are sort of extra experience on top of your base experience for a website, for example. I was reading about, I can't remember the name of the site. There's an add-on that basically, when you search for somebody's name on Google, this add-on actually adds search results to the page. And I wonder, it's kind of sketchy, but I can't remember which one it is. Sorry? Oh, the LinkedIn add-on. So there are people who are using extensions to drive more traffic to their sites for sure. Yeah. Yeah. So StumbleUpon, FoxyTunes are examples. So there are people who see it as a business opportunity. I mean, we've got a huge footprint. That's on a large number of users you can reach. If you can create something that we have and add value to it, we're happy to do it, right? We're happy to see that happen. It's good. It's good. A lot of Nagware add-ons? Yeah. So yeah, in the back. Yeah, so you're asking about the developer mindshare WebKit, basically. So WebKit is complicated. There's a bunch of things going on there. A lot of companies that are investing in WebKit basically do it because they feel that they can own the experience and the fact that they are really good it's good for embedding. It's pretty popular. So on the technology side, there's absolutely, I will say, no lie, there's absolutely a gap for us, which is that we are really hard to embed. Right? We're hard to just call from a C library and show a page. It's not impossible. I wrote a lot of that stuff for Linux originally, and it just, I went off and did other things, and it didn't really get maintained. We've been very focused on building a browser. But I will say, Christian was there, and Badad was there, wherever he is, with his big red hat. On Friday, we spent 2 hours, 3 hours going over exactly what it's going to take to close that gap. So it is basically, we have to build that community. We have to build that interest, understand exactly what it's going to be. We might actually just copy the WebKit API. We're okay with that, just to make it easy to embed. So that's important. I will say that there are a lot of interesting things going on in that space. WebKit is also extremely expensive in the sense that they never do releases. Right? There's no WebKit release. Go and look in their releases tag. They have one for the S60. Which is apparently now unmaintained. I saw some stories about that basically Nokia had abandoned that branch, which is sort of interesting. Have they gone off and done something internal, or they made a decision? It's hard to tell. Apple does their releases there, but Apple doesn't tell people before they do releases for security updates. Those just sort of get launched. So, there's no coordinated effort for WebKit, and I think that if we're willing to make that part of our release schedule and be able to bring partners on board and communicate fully as an open source project, just like we do with all Linux distributions who do releases all at the same time with our security updates, it's a very good story to tell. So there's a lot about WebKit to like. There's a lot about WebKit not to like. And we're certainly trying to close the technology gaps. One of the important things to realize is that a lot of those companies are using WebKit because it was more appropriate for mobile. It was faster, it was smaller, and that difference is gone. Clearly. It's clearly gone. So it basically, I think that with our commitment, our brand, our ability to say, can you walk into a store and say, I want the phone with Firefox on it? People buy phones for the apps that are available on it. I think that's going to be a huge deal. Our brand is a huge way to compete with WebKit. There's a lot of things to say that's good about WebKit. It's a decent renderer. Those guys have done an awesome job, even though they're a very small team, and we compete with them, but we also appreciate the work that they have done. But it's also sort of an incomplete package. Every one of those vendors that has to get WebKit working on their platform has to rewrite networking libraries. It doesn't include networking libraries of any kind. It doesn't include a disk cache. It doesn't include preferences. It doesn't include support for cookies. Includes some support for cookies, but there's no cookie store or anything like that. Everybody has to recreate it, so it's extremely expensive to maintain. It's extremely expensive to get involved and get it ported on your platform. There's no brand associated with it. Basically, the biggest distribution is Safari and the iPhone, which is actually not a huge market share, so it's third in line from a developer standpoint. Their web compatibility isn't very good. Ours is actually very good. It's behind IE because the web still follows IE because it's the majority. I talked about the developer problem. Basically, we own the developer market just because we provide really good tools, transparency, and consistent releases. And that's important for the mobile market, right? Our goal is to have the same source code in mobile that we have on the desktop so that developers who want to develop websites can have that sense of consistency. So there's a lot of things going for us. There's a lot of people picking up WebKit, but I think there's a lot of people picking up WebKit without exactly understanding what it means. That's why we're out talking about what we're doing on mobile too. So does that answer your question? Okay. Yeah. So the question is, are we pre-installing Firefox on computers, on name brand machines? So I talked about the fact that every user chooses right now. We actually think that's pretty important. I will say that we have come pre-installed on some computers. I think there was a program we did with Packard Bell in the UK. I don't know how many it actually resulted in. I will say if you understand the business model, a lot of those computer makers, so let's say you go to Dell, okay? You say, it would be great if you included Firefox on your computer. You know what they say? They say, if you pay us a fee, we'll be happy to include it, right? We have to pay them to be included on there. So, it's not a scalable model for us. If Dell's shipping 10 million units in 2 months, that's a huge amount of money for us. We're better off investing that money in a better experience and having people choose it at this point. It depends on the model, right? I mean, if Google did their own browser, they could happily pay or do a rev share model with Dell or something. That would be an interesting model for them. But it's hard to say, right? I mean, we're probably not going to pay people to ship our browser. If somebody else wants to, that's fine, but that's not for us. Yeah, Google does. Yep. It's nice. Yeah. So the question was, do those performance results include the JVM that Adobe licensed to us? The answer is no. That is not ready for prime time yet. I didn't talk at all about Mozilla 2 or sort of our future plans, but that's part of it, whether or not, which parts of that we actually want to pull in and start using. That's just based on the current VM we have. So it's interesting, we've actually discovered that since we've done all this performance work, that our current JVM, our current JavaScript VM is really, really fast, and we're starting to close the gaps with even that VM, the Tamarind VM. So the Tamarind VM actually gets a lot of performance gains on typed code, as opposed to like JavaScript as it exists today is an entirely untyped language. JavaScript 2, which is the language that really should drive the adoption of that VM, is optionally typed, and you really start to get the performance gains with that when you start touching typed code. So that's a long answer to your question, which is no. Yeah. I didn't include a slide on memory usage because I didn't have numbers when I wrote the slides, and I'm a little concerned about trying to include them before they're sort of solid and before we actually look at it. I will be honest and say that the behavior that I've seen from the Safari trunk, so I'm a little nervous answering this question, but I'll be honest about it. The WebKit trunk code on GTK versus the Mozilla code on GTK, the important thing you need to realize is they're very different code sets. Like I said, Mozilla includes a huge number of things. WebKit does not. So when WebKit starts up, it's usually about 8 to 10 meg less, right, on memory costs. But as soon as you start loading pages, those differences vanish very quickly. So WebKit, they both leak a little bit of memory as they grow, but WebKit generally grows almost twice as fast as we do. So over an internationalized page set, what I've seen, we basically have the top 500 sites available on the web. If I run a page load across all those pages out, loading one after the other, what I see is, Mozilla will generally get up to about 100 meg. It's probably a lot bigger than it should be. Some of that stuff is on Linux in particular. But, WebKit will get up to about 180, 190 meg. So it grows about twice as fast. I think that's actually one of the problems with the developer mindshare question is that most people see it start up and they're like, holy crap, it's tiny. It's half the size of what Mozilla is. A gap of 8 or 10 meg. But unless you actually sort of go against the web and actually understand exactly what happens. There are a lot of pages where we just flat out use less memory. Really complicated applications like Gmail, like Google Reader, all these Ajax-y sites, like Zimbra applications, for example, which load a huge amount of memory. We do a lot better than Safari does. They make a lot of trade-offs for space versus time, right? They cache a lot of extra stuff. So, in memory usage, we actually do very, very well. There's a lot of tight code in Mozilla, even though it's sort of, it's perceived as being very difficult to hack on and very difficult to use. We actually do have a lot of really tight code in there that doesn't use a lot of memory. So we actually do quite well on memory. Yeah. Standards bodies? Yeah, so you're asking what is our level of participation with standards bodies? We spend a lot of time participating with standards bodies. We participate with the W3C, the WhatWG is another work group, this sort of ad hoc stuff. We absolutely are participating in those groups. They've become a little bit less functional than they used to be. It's very hard to get things done. I don't know when the last time an HTML spec came out, but it's been a long time. And the HTML5 stuff isn't done yet. It isn't, they're actually hung up on the codec issue. Like, should they include a codec for the video spec? And we're starting to see browser manufacturers shipping before the specs are done because the market doesn't wait. So we are very active in those groups, as active as we can be. We respect standards. We think they're very important. But we're also going to lead ahead of them if that's absolutely what's required. We don't want to, but we need to do things for our users because Microsoft is not going to wait on standards for Silverlight. Adobe's not going to wait on standards to release new versions of Air. We need to compete in a marketplace that doesn't think about standards. So, we know what time it is. All right, I'll take one more. Yes. So your question was about native widget integration on Firefox? Sorry, RSVG. Oh, operating system widget integration. So Firefox 3 includes supports for using native widgets to render HTML. So if you go to Google and the buttons are native OS X buttons or native Linux buttons. So the answer is Firefox 3. Get a beta. You'll love it. It's great. All right. Anything else? Oh, one more. So the question is, are we going to see something like Google Gears integrated in Mozilla in the future? The answer is there are already parts of that. We've been looking at it. Google would love us to include it in Mozilla directly. We're not ready to do that, partially because of the cross-browser issue. So we'll see. We definitely are interested in some of the things. There's asynchronous threads, worker threads that we think is really neat. I think we're going to try and do something around that at some point. But we've been pretty focused on Firefox 3 at this point. So these are developer features that we absolutely want to have. I think we've been, especially for mobile, we've been looking at things like location APIs. Like they just added this whole set of location APIs to Google Gears. It's fine. We're going to try and include what best features we can find. A lot of the browsers are starting to include it, a lot of offline stuff as well. So it's coming. It just doesn't come as fast. Google Gears is sort of interesting from my standpoint because it does represent Google's attempt to sort of try and keep the web browser market moving even faster, right? They've got this plugin that works on multiple browsers. It's kind of nice in that respect. At the same time, we tend to move a little bit more cautiously in that regard. I think that's about it. So thank you very much. Good questions. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Next up on this stage will be Log Radio Live and Unleashed in about